Now it's recording.
So, first things first, guys, how are you?
Excellent. Good to be here.
Good.
How are you?
Good to hear. So, I kind of want to jump straight into it. And on the last album, Haven, well, it said there was an undertone of the world going insane. So now, a couple of years on, where do you think we are now with that?
More insane, I guess.
Yeah. Totally. With this album, The Shadow Theory, we kind of we have one foot still in that environment, and the platform of the world being super, just spinning faster and faster, we weren't really done with that yet, so we really wanted to give it another go.
Yeah, like we see this this introduction of AI being really important. We kind of incorporated that into a lot of the themes in the record, and we see how that's sort of evolving culturally, with robotics, and it's something that I'm interested in, at least, and we incorporated some of those themes into the record, and so yeah, the world's still getting crazier.
So in that sense then, were there ideas left over from Haven that kind of continued into this new album?
No, we started completely fresh on this one. And I think you can also hear it when you listen. Everything is kind of connected in both musically and lyrically, and in a good way. So it's kind of like even though we started making this album a year ago, to this point, most of it came together really in the end.
Okay.
You can really hear that because it sounds really cohesive, and there's a vibe there throughout the album.
What was the starting point then of the record? Because I believe you all live in different places. So when did kind of the whole process start up?
Well, for me, the idea of the shadow thing came from Carl Jung, and this idea of the shadow being this subconscious of the mind, and that was kind of the genesis for me with this idea of shadows and our psychological kind of twists that we wanted to put into the record. And then we still wanted to keep a little bit of this resistance revolution thing that we had with Haven. And then Tommy kind of took it from there and started working on the different songs, and we had different ideas for each song we would discuss, and lyrically he would be able to kind of like put the final touches onto the idea.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it like a conceptual theme, but not maybe down to the detail where you can follow like a storyline, a chronological order, but to have be embraced by the fact that it's actually somehow fits together. So we came up with these three key elements, being the Shadow Empire, Shadow Key, and the Shadow Wall, to kind of build the whole story around. But I felt it was important to keep it on a song level. You can still take a song out and enjoy it as for what it is.
Yeah, today's kind of Spotify download environment, to do a full concept record where every song is tied to each other might not make a whole lot of sense, So from that aspect, every song has its own kind of story, but there's a fine line that goes through all of them, which is important.
That's an interesting point, because with streaming services and Spotify, do you think kind of that idea of a concept album is lost a little bit, or lost art in a way?
I don't think so. Not with this. Not necessarily. With the rock audience or the metal audience or the prog audience being very, very still a good platform for bands. Because they buy this stuff because they want to see the lyrics, they want to smell the booklet, and really be a part of the band. So I think. Not necessarily, but it's definitely easier to be able to just, take a song out.
It might make the way of doing a concept record in the future different. This is not a concept record per se, but for example, in some concept records, you might have a song that is totally outside of the normal musical thing, but it fits the concept. So if you were to just listen to that, and you don't really know the band, or you don't know it's a concept, you might think, oh, this is this is an odd song. But
Right.
so that might change the way that the composition of a concept record might change. Yeah.
And so does the band, or maybe amongst the two of you, do you, in the beginning, have discussions? You mentioned Carl Jung and kind of the themes. Do you discuss with each other where it's going and what you kind of are thinking of?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we discussed a lot of the psychological things, the way we see this sort of upper layer of the rich kind of deciding what everybody's going to do, what kind of media that they're going to see, all of these kind of aspects that kind of went into the basis for the shadow theory. You know? There's a part of it we call the shadow wall, which is kind of the smoke screen that is thrown up for the average person to kind of stay
in line with their agenda without actually knowing it. You know? So they kind of it's easier to, because the human being, as we see it, is one that needs to belong somewhere and have a purpose, you know, and so they create this environment for us to you know, religion and wars and turn people against each other to have a purpose, and just the fact that everyone is having a mortgage, you know, that you're locked inside of a, you know, you draw a circle around you and you have to stand in it for the rest of your life.
Kind of the rat race of life that everybody.
Exactly, and people think it's normal, and we kind of question that a little bit here in this story.
Just hold that thought. I'm just gonna make that light a little less bright. Okay. So we have this kind of world, and how do you combat that then, in your opinion? How do you kind of make up your own decisions?
Well, that's interesting because also part of the idea is this shadow key, and if you look at, when you see the cover, there's a keyhole that, and the idea is that everybody really has the power to make a change, you know, whether it's for your personal life or society, and even for me personally, like the whole debt thing is crucial to freedom, you know. Several years ago, I kind of like took care of all my debt, you know. So I basically try to live a debt-free life, and it's so freeing when you don't have to wake up and worry about owing somebody money, you know. So I think that's the first step, is just realizing the little things that kind of bind you, and slowly work at taking care of those things.
In reflection to the music industry, then. Is that a difficult industry to kind of operate in as freely as you just now mentioned?
I think, well, for us, I mean, the labels have always been 100% creative control for the band, and we don't sing demos or anything. We have 100% creative control over it. So for me personally, and for the band, it's like, it's been great. You know, it hasn't been any issues, I don't think. I mean, I don't know if you have anything.
Okay, that's good. And do you remember what kind of the first song was that kind of came together?
Yeah, it has to be because Thomas and Oliver worked on some stuff almost a year ago now, and there were some ideas coming out of that, which I then kind of started to work on. And I think the very first one I think was Static. That I approached, but it's really hard to say at this point because everything comes together. You know, it's like an organic thing, and some parts come here, and then the chorus might come a lot later. And
there's a song called RavenLight. I think that was one of the first ones that we first heard the finished demo on from. Because he went to Germany to work with our producer to work on vocals, and I think that was one of the first ones. And you know, there's certain components of writing an album when you know that you've got what you need and that what you want to make the album round. And I remember when I heard that song, and then we have a song called Kevlar Skin. So those crucial melodies that you know are like perfect for the Kamelot fans, and for the album, and you start to hear those, and you really feel good about the direction. And I think those are some of the key songs for me.
You touched upon an interesting thing, because after so many albums, is it inevitable that you have to keep in mind kind of what you've made before and how you proceed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for me, when it comes to writing, working on the album, rounding it off, is to make sure that the fans get some of what they expect and some of what they don't expect. And I think, in a funny way, they expect the unexpected, you know? So we feel like every record has a certain base, and then we experiment with certain things. And I think that's also made the band more viable over the years, that we don't just rest on our laurels and do the same songs over and over again, you know. And the fans appreciate that, which is cool.
Well, the hard part of being a band like Kamelot has so many records and so many good songs is to be repetitive without being repetitive.
Right.
You know, it's being. We need this kind of energy, but we cannot do the song again. Like that's a big challenge actually to write something that it has the same flair or the same melodic approach without doing the same song, which I think we also managed to do really good on this album, to capture that Kamelot signature sound, but do completely new melodies.
So where does this originate? And is it in the studio where everything gets thrown together, and then you kind of figure out, okay, this might be a little bit too much like, or how do you kind of make those decisions?
Well, a lot of stuff happens, I would say, because everything comes together in Wolfsburg, right? Like everything has to go through Sascha.
No.
And so a lot of stuff happens there. When we actually hear the final thing, we can say, oh, you know, or he can say, maybe not this, or so there's like a quality control a couple of times before it's done.
Okay.
So, but it's definitely when it comes together, it's then we have a feeling for, oh, okay, yeah, this is great, or this is maybe not this, or yeah.
And you mentioned RavenLight just now, and Tommy, for you, you mentioned that Oliver and Thomas kind of sent you music. So how much of that influences what you do with it next?
A lot, because I only like it's the music. The vocals are always for me an extension of what I already hear.
Okay.
Like if I have a music that calls for a certain thing, it's going to happen because it's how I listen to music. So usually there is one way that I think it should be when I hear the music, because it calls for the feeling somehow.
Do you remember what kind of feeling you got when you started working on RavenLight, and then for you the same?
Well, yeah, RavenLight was one that Tommy pretty much wrote the music and everything for. I mean, the drum tracks to the keyboards. So that was cool because he never really heard his songwriting before. I mean, I know he does songwriting for Seventh Wonder, and it's. Right away, the riff to me was super cool, and it was original, but still had this Kamelot flair, and so I was, really happy about that contribution.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was one of the first that we just worked on, and I think, yeah, I don't know if I was lucky or I don't know what happened, but it turned out really cool. I think. One of my couple of favorite songs on the album for me, yeah.